My name's Nikki and I am an addict. I was born and my mother took her first hit of weed when I was in her stomach. So it was the first time she ever tried a drug. I was in her stomach. So then all of a sudden I'm born and I'm this beautiful sparkly little thing. She decides to become a heroin addict. So by the time I'm 2, my mom's boyfriend is trying to kill me, drown me in the bathtub. Grandma comes in and rescues me. From 2 to 6, I stayed with my grandma, who treated me like princess, and my life was like a little fairy tale. And then my mom said that she was okay, and she was in Oregon. So what happened is my grandma took me to Oregon where everybody was on a pot farm. So I became sunshine. I was a little hippie girl, and from 6 to 11, I was smoking weed on a daily basis. I had a sister when I was 8, and I delivered her, and then we smoked weed, a big joint, and drank mushroom tea and buried the placenta. So I was always an outcast. I was never good enough, and my father never tried to find me, so I just assumed that he didn't care. So when he showed up, I was like, I don't know who the F you think you are, because that's how I talked. I am your father. You are nothing. Go away. So I didn't see him again until I was 18. And the worst part about that was that he came along, and he was driving this Porsche, and he bought me $3,000 in clothes, got me a car, and sent me off to U of A for a semester. So my mom gave me my first joint, my dad gave me my first line of speed. So I was like destined to be involved in drugs. That's just the way my life was. Everyone in my family, except for grandma, was doing something. Everybody was either stoned or drunk or high, and so that's just the way it was. And after that, my desire to need to be loved and wanted by these men in my life, my family members. From 18 to 26, I was molested, I was beaten, I was raped, I went through some loss of some children, and I had a child in there, and I met his father at the drug dealer's house. Of course, I was getting weed and he was getting LSD, so it was a match made in heaven. And I told him I wanted a kid, and he said okay, and so we had one, and then he left, and then I had the kid. And I thought being a good mom, I thought I was a good mom because he had name brand clothes, he had name brand shoes, he had toys, he had everything he could possibly have monetarily, but he just really didn't have me, even though I thought I was protecting him. I loved pot so much that even when I was gacked out, and I was dealing drugs, I was dealing weed, and I was dealing speed, somebody put a gun to my back. Somebody came up, put a gun to my back and wanted my stuff. And he got into my apartment, and there were 5 other people in there, and he went and got my stash, my personal stash, the Primo buds that I had picked out. And the problem is that he took them. So the minute he took them, I didn't care. He made everybody on the floor, and I wasn't gonna get on the floor. I just stood there with my son, and I was like, no. And then when he went to reach for the rest of the weed, I grabbed the bag out of his hand, and I said, that's my shit, dude. And I told my kid to run, and we ran out the back door, and I left everyone there to die. For weed. For weed. Yeah, crazy. So I know what kind of an addict I am, and I know what kind of a mental problem that I had when it comes to the obsession of pot or alcohol or drugs, whatever it is. After that, in 1996, my son's father said, hey, let's go see Mary Jane, and we went, and we got a bag of weed, and we came back, and we smoked it. And I was still involved in all kinds of other drugs at that point. He went to the courthouse that day and said I was comatose off marijuana and took my kid. So I was devastated. I was like, oh my God, really? I'm the greatest mom in town. And so when he took my kid, I kind of freaked out and stayed up for 3 days because I was determined that something was gonna happen to him. So I'm drinking the vodka, and I've got a little weed because I always had weed. And the ex-husband calls, can we be friends? And I'm like, oh, sure. And so I meet him up at the restaurant, Country Boys. Next thing I know, I'm out in Youngtown, and I'm about as wasted as I can possibly get. I was in a blackout. I don't remember much except that he called the cops, and I was in a bikini, and he told them I was crazy. And what happened is they went through all my stuff, and they found my little tiny bit of weed, and they found my 3 roaches, and my pipe, and that was called 2 felonies and 2 misdemeanors, and I was a teacher. And I'll never forget when that cop said, I would never want you teaching my children. That crushed me, and I knew right then that I had bit him. I don't remember biting him, but I remember when that cop said, I would never want you teaching my kid, that killed me because I've taught many, many kids, and that's one thing I've done right. And I was sober for most of my teaching career, and boy, did that hit home. So I made a decision right then and there. I will never do anything to go to jail again. For me, weed cost me $2 grand 60 hours of drug classes, 24 hours of community service, and a year of supervised probation. And so my first 7 months of recovery was pretty interesting. On the 15th, I walked in, August 15th, 2012. I walked into a 12-step meeting, and it changed my life. And what happened from that experience is that I started to get to know who I was. I quit blaming other people. I quit blaming my family. I quit thinking that I'm not responsible. And I did everything I needed to do with the courts, and I did everything I needed to do. I worked, and I lost my fingerprint card for a little while, and I had to go work at this deli, this gas station place, which was across the street from the high school where my kids that I taught in second grade were now in high school. And they would come in, and they'd be like, "Hey, Miss P," and I'd be like, "Hey," and I'd give them their burgers. And I didn't have a car. And the universe, my mom died 7 months into my sobriety. And after she died, it was pretty traumatic. And my son, he started getting a little out of control for a second, and then he went into the Air Force. And so April was the big month. April 13th, my ex-mother-in-law died. April 26th, my mom died. April 23rd, my son went into the Air Force. So on April 27th, I woke up and went, what do I do now? And that's when change really started happening. I became conscious, and I truly believe that the consciousness I have today is something I would never want to lose. So I wouldn't get stoned today because of that. I don't want to drink today because I have some amazing stuff going on. And the universe keeps doing these amazing things. So I'm like at that deli and I'm tripping out. I finally get my fingerprint card back. I take the plea deal, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden I'm tripping. And I had applied for this job. And I go outside on my lunch break or on a smoke break. And I'm smoking a cigarette. And I'm like, universe, have I not learned love and patience and tolerance? Because I'd been there and these people were Arabs and they were yelling at me. They didn't like white people and they didn't like women. So, and the coolest thing happened. My phone rang asking me if I could go to an interview. And this is during one cigarette. So that's like an 11-minute cigarette break. Me and that tree, we became companions after that because I was out there talking to the tree all the time. And whatever works. For me, I had to find, the reality is I have to have something to believe in. And that's what I know about recovery. I know that in order for me not to get loaded, I have to believe that I'm not God. Does that mean I have to believe in someone else's God? It does not mean that, because I don't. But let me just say, man, the universe and creation and the things that are outside of me are so amazing. And all I know is I got to wake up and I go, okay, today's the day, let's go. And as long as I just let everything happen the way it's supposed to, everything's okay. I don't worry about tomorrow because it's not here. I don't worry about yesterday because I can't do anything about it. It's all about staying conscious. Conscious. Maybe I should go put my paperwork in to be a substitute teacher. And so I did. And that was on a Tuesday. And then I went into work on Wednesday and 16 Philly cheesesteaks on a grill, like a 2-foot by 2-foot grill. And I got everything done and I was very upset, and the boss lady comes in and she's screaming at me, telling me how horrible I am, what a bad line cook I am. I'm like, lady, I'm not a line cook, I'm a teacher. So the next thing I know, I quit my job. I just quit. I go, I think I need to go home. And that peace that I felt when I was saying that, instead of freaking out and yelling and all that, was crazy. So I leave and I go home and I tell my roommate, who's my pregnant sponsee, and I'm like, hey, don't quit your job, because I quit mine. And I just knew it would be okay. I didn't know how, because normally I'd freak out. I went home and went to a meeting and then came home and went to bed, and I woke up at 6 a.m. to a phone call. Can you come sub? And that was 2.5 years ago. And I walked into that classroom and I met this amazing leader, and the next thing I knew, there I was, back in the classroom, and wow. And I don't know how it happened, but I can tell you that it happened, and I got to stay with the organization that I'm still with today. And what was really cool is that there was that point where I had to go to HR. And they were like, oh, hello, we see this, this, and this. But they didn't put everything in the computer right, so it looks like I had felonies and this and that. So I had to go into this organization and have faith. that if I'm supposed to be a teacher, I'll be a teacher, you know, and it was great. And I got the job, even though they knew, you know, and my leader knows, and I'm still working for the same leader, and wow, and I get to touch kids' lives every day. You know, it's crazy. My journey is amazing. I have a lot of women in my life today, and I trust them, and I don't have anger today. You know, that's a big thing for me. Everything that happened in my life just happened, you know. It's all events. There's nothing that is so significant that I need to numb my feelings. I like my feelings, even the sad ones, even the scary ones, even the angry ones. Today I pause though, you know. Today I know to just stop for a second and go, I sponsor women. I work a program. I love my job. I teach these kids about love and patience and tolerance and kindness and how can they change the world. Because I think it kind of starts here. You know, and I'm just lucky that I've had this experience, you know. There's a solution. We don't have to keep living that way. You just have to be willing to change. For me, about addiction was that it was so embedded in me. The getting high and the things you do to get high, and it's still this comfortable, safe place, even though you've got all this chaos going on, right? And then when you try to go to recovery, when you change and you come out of this world that you've been in and you go to recovery, it's scary as hell. It's okay because you know how to deal with that. And when you get sober, when you stop using drugs, when you choose recovery, it's scarier than being out there because you've already known that. You already know what that life is like. But you don't know the struggles to stay sober, to not get loaded, to go to meetings, or to do it however you're gonna do it. But now you gotta get a job, and all these obstacles try to push you back into that life because that is easier, as crazy as it is. Giving recovery just that chance, you know, getting out of that old box and coming into a new one, there is so much more beauty in it. There is so much more benefit because you can be anything you wanna be. Like, what I know and what I learned is that I'm smart and that I have a gift, and that when I'm loaded, I'm not smart and I don't have that gift, you know, but my goodness, I was always a good person. And I truly believe that addicts and alcoholics are good people. And once you get into a path of not getting loaded, people will love you and they will show you that it's okay, you know, and no matter what you've ever done, someone's done it too. I love that part. You know, my greatest gift in recovery is working with others and helping people, and I love it so much because it makes everything possible. Like, you can be anything you want to be. I know doctors and lawyers, teachers and architects, and even though in the beginning you feel like you can't be anything because everything's all jacked up, it will change. It will pass. Just do it.